Do you already have a strategy for teaching your speech therapy students the personal pronouns he, she, and they? I can remember during my CFY doing a language evaluation for a child who was probably 3 or 4. I don't really remember much about that evaluation, but what stuck out to me was that this child struggled with using pronouns. And in this evaluation, the mother, who used she, her pronouns, was worried because her child used the male pronoun he when talking about her. And she was worried that her child thought that she was a man. I understand that fear. Pronouns are tiny words that hold so much meaning and identity. However, I am not going to be diving into that complex topic today. Instead, let's dive into how to strategically teach pronouns to our speech therapy students who struggle with this skill. Disclaimer. Today, I am only talking about teaching pronouns in the traditional sense. This is a very sensitive and complex topic, and it should be taught based on the student's individual and family needs. Let's go on. So, as with all language skills, there are a myriad of foundational skills that students must learn before they can use pronouns correctly. That means that we, as SLPs, have a myriad of foundational skills we must strategically teach before our students can use personal pronouns correctly. For example, our students must be able to understand vocabulary such as boy, man, or male, and girl, woman, female. They must also be able to understand the concept of more than one. They need to be provided multiple different practice opportunities to generalize these skills into daily life. And ideally, these practice opportunities should be scaffolded from easy to hard to help our speech therapy students feel the most successful. Pronouns need to be taught strategically, which is why I created a pronoun teaching guide. Rather than using a drill-based method, I used a scaffolded approach to teach and then practice these complex skills. Here's how I strategically teach pronouns in my speech therapy room. First, I start by teaching the sight words he, she, and they. I want my students to be able to recognize these words by sight because it allows me to use these words as a visual cue later on in the teaching process. I typically begin formally teaching pronouns to my speech kiddos who are in kindergarten. So I have found that this pairs perfectly with the skills that they are developing in the classroom. Next, I teach the rules for pronouns. Since I usually begin by teaching pronouns in their traditional forms, that means that I explain she equals girl, he equals boy, and they equals more than one person. I choose this method because this is what applies to the majority of the population. If my students are already struggling with this complicated skill, adding in nuances and extra rules could cause them to flounder. But again, use your best judgment for your individual student. If your student would benefit from learning non-traditional rules for pronouns, then by all means teach it. After that, we begin to practice using pronouns. I start with tasks that I consider to be easier. For example, these would be skills that are heavily based in comprehension rather than use of the skill. So here is how I scaffold my lessons as I teach pronouns to my speech therapy students. 1, They have to begin by understanding the concept of boy and girl. 2, we identify the sight words, he, she, and they. Next, we begin sorting pictures of just he and she. So there's just a choice of 2. And then we begin he and she sorting of written names. So this time they don't have the visual cue of the picture. They just have to identify if the name sounds male or female. Then we begin sorting he, she, and they with pictures. So now there's a choice of 3 instead of a choice of 2. And then, I bet you can guess it, we go to he, she, and they with words and written names. After that, we practice changing nouns into a pronoun. For example, I might give them a sentence that says a name, such as Ben, and they must change that pronoun to he. To make things a little bit more challenging, we go around the building and we begin to do a building scavenger hunt of pronouns. So this means we are making sentences about the people we see around us and what they're doing in real life. For example, she is cleaning. He is reading. And then the most complex activity that I teach them in this teaching guide is the pronoun reading passage. So in this one, students must read a short passage and then they identify the pronouns in that short story. But you may be wondering, what about speech therapy homework for pronouns? I am so glad you asked, because I have a strategy for providing homework as well. In my teaching strategy for personal pronouns, I have made a teaching page and then a corresponding homework page. So we will do the teaching page together in speech, and then I also have a homework page that mirrors the teaching page so that students can confidently practice the skills we learned at home. Easy peasy. If you don't already have a strategy for teaching personal pronouns in speech therapy, you no longer have to struggle, because this teaching guide will do all the hard work for you.